What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up, Monday, August 19th. And I apologize, we didn't do a show late last week because I was off. I was in Chicago. I was taking in a game at Wrigley Field. And Anthony, one thing I know, and having watched the Phillies this year, is that when you're off, you can't do anything. You can't do a podcast. You can't even answer a phone call, because when you are off, you are off. And that's one thing that I've learned from Rob Thompson, especially this weekend. Bryce Harper was off yesterday, and I hope that because he saved all of his energy, that come October, he's going to be ready to rip. 4-2 homestand against the Washington Nationals and Miami Marlins. Start the parade. Here we go. I'm done. Go ahead.
Oh, is that it? Good
That's
to see
it.
you, Bob. Welcome back. Welcome back from your trip. You weren't really off. You were doing work stuff out there, but you know.
Nah, I was like straight up off. I was at a bachelor party, 18 guys, Wrigley Field. Like it was good times.
Oh, I thought
Yeah.
this was part of it. I thought that when you were in Cleveland and then had to
No.
go to Chicago, I thought
So
that
I have
was
a
part
fear
of
of flying. Like, the Madden Cruiser, how
Yeah.
you used to fire up the Outback Madden Cruiser. I have just an atrocious fear of flying. So what I did was I left on Wednesday morning, drove from Philly to Cleveland, got there around like 6 o'clock local time, same time zone, right? Whatever. What am I trying to say? I took in the Guardians game. They were playing the Cubs. Did that East 4th Street thing, had some drinks, woke up Thursday morning, drove from Cleveland to Chicago.
Wow.
And then did a couple days out in Chicago over the weekend. So I'm back. I wouldn't say I'm refreshed, and I'm certainly not in a great mood, but here we are. I'm ready to go.
Well, yeah, when you got to drive all halfway across the country and back, of course you're not going to be.
Yeah, I know. Like people are listening. It's like, dude, just pop a couple pills, you'll be on your way, no problem. But
so you understand load management now, right?
I do. Yeah, load management's very important.
So this is the whole response. And look, I understand, and I know everybody in this city is losing their mind today, or they were yesterday, and probably still are today. I haven't even turned on talk radio, so I have no idea what they're talking about this morning, but I got to assume it's this. And they're losing their mind that Rob Thompson did not pinch hit Bryce Harper in the 9th inning, down 2 runs, and the tying run coming to the plate, and instead let Cal Stevenson bat. Then ultimately Garrett Stubbs, but that wasn't going to happen either because JT Realmuto gets an off day. And the one thing, we were sitting there in the press box, and nobody was surprised by this. And the reason nobody was surprised by this is because this is how Rob Thompson has managed the Phillies since taking over in 2022. He gives guys a day off, and they're off, especially guys like Realmuto for sure, and especially a guy like Harper. When you take Bryce Harper out of the lineup, you want him to not play at all. I don't even think he had his jersey on yesterday. He came out they had that pregame ceremony honoring 20 years at Citizens Bank Park, and they brought up the Bedlam at the bank, and so they honored representing the Phillies for that team was Ranger Suarez and Bryce Harper. Neither one of them had a jersey on. They were both out there in that short sleeve Phillies red shirt, that like pullover T-shirt kind of thing. He was not available. He was not available from minute one. And it didn't matter what the situation was. He just was not going to play him. And we could all sit here and criticize. And I understand why. Bryce Harper gives you an infinitely better chance of tying that game in the 9th inning than Cal Stevenson, right? But the reality of it is that if you know Rob Thompson, you know that this is how it's planned out in advance. And so they went into the game yesterday knowing 2 of their bench guys were not available at all. In case Realmuto, only if Stubbs got hurt, right? Other than that, neither one of those 2 guys were going to play. And so really it comes down to who else was left. And so I thought that there was a chance, especially with the way he's been hitting, that Wes Wilson would have been a guy that he would have gone to in that spot. And he didn't. And so that was the point when I was questioning, like, you really want to leave this in the hands of Cal Stevenson when you got a guy like Wes Wilson who's been hitting really well since he's come back up. Like, that was the sub that I thought should be made. No, but I know in my head, Harper and Realmuto are just not going to play because that's the way this guy is.
All right, so here's my issue with this, and I get it. Like, I mean, I've covered this team. I've watched Rob Thompson. I too was not blown away by the fact that Bryce Harper did not hit in the spot for Cal Stevenson. It wasn't like I was stunned. And generally speaking, I support the concept of this guy is off. Let's get him off. Let's stack days off. That it can have a positive impact for a player down the stretch. My problem is that we are now down the stretch. Like, you're in it now. It's August 19th. It's not May 4th anymore. You were off this past Monday. You're off today. You have a half-game lead on the Los Angeles Dodgers. You have a one-game lead on the Milwaukee Brewers. You have an opportunity to go 5-1 on this homestand, complete a 4-game sweep. And I'm not saying that Bryce Harper would have delivered. In fact, the way that he swung the bat the last couple games, I don't know. But I know that he gives you a better chance than Cal Stevenson. And I think that that's my issue, coupled with the fact that it's not a universal treatment. The game was important enough that you decided to go to Matt Strahm and you went to Jeff Hoffman, who are both struggling and look like they could use a blow, but you're going to use them. But then you can't get Bryce Harper to do some fucking stretches, shimmy a little bit and get his ass in the box for one at bat. Now, listen, this does come with one caveat. And the caveat is, maybe Bryce Harper was hurt. Maybe he really needed yesterday and today to shake whatever he was dealing with, right? Maybe could be it. Maybe. I'm not privy to that information. So all I can do is go by the fact that guy played on Friday, guy played on Saturday. He's got 2 days off. He couldn't have taken one at bat in that spot. Like, I just feel like it's cool to have your guiding principles. It's cool to have this foundation in place where you say, this is what we want to do. But the Phillies, here's the problem, Anthony. When you're up 5 games in the National League and you have a 10-game lead in the National League East, you have the luxury of being able to do these things without criticism. Maybe some criticism, but when you suck, I mean, like, seriously, the thing I hate about this is that I know I sound like pretty much every WIP host right now, and I sound like the majority of fans. And usually when you are those people and you're on that side, you're probably wrong. So, like, I'm willing to acknowledge this in real time. But my issue is, it's like you've pissed away the ability to do those things. Like, you've got to go. And I'm sorry, like, what does another win going into Atlanta do for you? How about that? Like, how about take an 8-game lead in? How about be up another game and a half over the Dodgers? How about be up another game again? Like, I just don't understand in the moment. Like, what are you waiting for? And if the answer is October, that's great. But now you're fundamentally altering your ability to make a deep run in October, because I'm telling you, man, they're flirting with disaster. If they have to play that opening series game or that opening series in October, I'm not saying that they're going to get bounced, but like, there is a significant advantage in not having to go through an extra round in the postseason. And we could talk about what's happened to number 1 seeds, top seeds, teams that sat on their hands getting bounced. Just go get a bye. Go get a bye. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Let's worry and have all the hand wringing in October about, rust versus rust. Let's at least have the ability to have that conversation. And I just don't get what they're doing here. Like, 4-2. Is everyone supposed to feel good about the Phillies today? 4-2 against those two teams. Those teams are atrocious.
No, but I'll tell you, Bob, that I felt like, see, this is what I look at the 6-game homestand and I say the game that bothered me was the first game against the Marlins, not yesterday. Like, I thought 3 out of 4 against Washington made sense. I mean, it's
hard to sweep a team in 4 games, no matter who it is, where you're playing. I get that.
They're not god awful, right? They're not
pretty bad. They're pretty bad.
They're a bad team, but they're
playing with a short bullpen too, by the way, which is another thing. Like, we could talk about what Rob Thompson did in the 9th inning. Had that not happened, I would have said, how do you not get to that bullpen yesterday? Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I got a lot of people lost track, and I was the AP guy yesterday. I thought Jake Irvin was an important piece to the Nationals winning that game yesterday, because he was able to get them 6 innings. Where if you get him out of the game early, the Phillies probably win that game, right? I mean, so, but if I'm looking at the whole homestand, 6 games, and say 4-2 is, I mean, that's the bottom bare minimum that you had to do against those two teams. But I kind of looked at it and thought 5-1 was what it was going to be, with the 1 loss coming somewhere against Washington. So the one that upsets me is the 5-0 loss to Miami. That one was the one where I felt like, that was ended up being their rock bottom. I would assume, considering it was coming on the heels of the rest of that slump that they were in. But yesterday, is it in the vacuum of the game itself? Is it frustrating how everything came to be? Of course. Of course it is. But if you look at the whole big picture, okay, you probably were going to lose one to Washington. You didn't like how it happened, but it happened.
You know where I've arrived here. You know that I've always been very pro Rob Thompson, and we almost like laugh at the notion, like the criticism of him. I was very critical of yesterday. I thought that was a joke. I really did. I honestly thought that was. How do I want to say this? I thought it was a loser mentality yesterday. I just did. I feel like that they punted in a game. Like, you know what? Go get one back.
But and I'm going to respond to that, Bob. Generally, I agree with you because I hate what sports has become. And this is the old man yelling at the cloud kind of philosophy. But since you're on this pedestal too, I'll join you. I hate the fact that this is what sports has become. That guys, you got to have a day off, and you're taking a day. But that's what it is. Unfortunately, that's what we've become. That's what the sports landscape. It's not just baseball, but I mean, it's what the landscape has become. And so therefore we are from a generation, and even though you're younger than me, your generation as well remembers a time when this didn't happen. And so therefore we get more up in arms when it does. But the reality of it is 10 years from now, nobody's going to care. Like, this is going to be the norm, right?
Right. And look, like I'm 38 years old. I was not a very good athlete. I played sports. I played in high school, but I mean, not at a high level. I coached high school sports. Those that listen to the show know that I was a head baseball coach for a number of years. I was assistant football coach. And like, there's like this old school mentality, and a lot of people have it. It's like, you got to play 162. It's sort of like at the high school level, like, you're out there football. It's early August. You're having 2-a-days. It used to be 3-a-days. And, coaches would be like, water is for bitches, water's for, I won't use that word, but like water's for soft, like it's ridiculous. Like, you need water. You got to hydrate. Like, we know that, right? Like, you got to, like, there's like this like Neanderthal archaic mentality. And like, I'm not that guy. Like, I understand like load management. I understand getting a guy a blow. I just feel like grabbing a bat in the 9th inning when you have a chance to potentially come back and steal a game after you've been playing like dog shit for 5 weeks. Like, that annoys me. It does. And I don't think that there's any correlation between Bryce Harper taking or not taking that at bat yesterday and his performance against the Braves, or his performance or his ability to hold up in October. I just don't. What's the worst case scenario there? He pops a 2-run homer and then has to go stand at first base for another 8 minutes in the 10th inning. I mean, that's not going to have a material impact on his longevity or his ability to hold up this season. That's my problem with it. And that's why I think it was stupid, especially given where they're at. Like, everyone, here's what I'm going to say. This is what I actually started saying. Like, I like Rob Thompson. Think he's a good manager. I think that some of the criticism of Rob is ridiculous. He is going to get destroyed if the Phillies collapse in October. Like, if they don't perform, and I'm not saying win the World Series, but if they go one and done, or they are flat, or they look cooked, he is going to get destroyed.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. But again, that part of it is the hypothetical. And I will agree with you. Like, I don't understand it. I don't think that there's a physical, like, I'm not going to defend the medical thought process behind it, but there is one, right? Whether or not we agree with it, that's what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you that they have people who study this.
I know
that study the health and biometrics and everything else of every athlete. And this is what they determine, that this is the best course of action to have them performing at their peak at the time that matters most, which will be October. And those same doctors will tell you that even avoiding one at bat and 8 minutes at first base will be significantly advantageous to the Phillies down the line. I don't see it either, Bob. It doesn't make rational sense to me, but that's what they believe. And so therefore, that's how they're going to manage this team. And when I say they, yes, Rob is the guy, and he's the head of the the totem pole. He's the top person there, and so of course everybody's going to go after him. But these are decisions that are being made by a lot of people, not just Rob Thompson, right? And so those people are all together saying Bryce Harper does not get into this game unless it's an absolute emergency.
What I'm curious to know is like what would be really interesting is Bryce Harper sitting there going like, yeah, I'm on board with it. I see the science and awesome. But yeah, I mean, look, it would have been cool to get that one yesterday. But no problem. Like, I'm with Rob. Good stuff. Like, this is what we do. We'll let's go get the Braves this week. Or is Bryce Harper sitting on the bench going like, this is a joke. This is an absolute joke. Let me hit, And part of me hopes that he's in agreement so that there's like this universal accord. But then part of me is like, as a competitor, and I know he's a competitor, I hope he's like steaming mad sitting there going like, are we for real right now? So I'm kind of, I know business as usual. This is what they do. So like they have to be programmed to some degree here to be on board. But like, hold on.
And I think it's probably somewhere in between the two in the sense that he knows that he's not being called upon. He knows from 3 days ago that he's not going to be used at any point, no matter what the situation is in this game. And so therefore, mentally, he's shut it down. He's shut it off. He's turned it off, right? Because he knows he's not playing on Sunday. But that when he's sitting there in the moment, does the notion come into his head that, well, geez, if I was available, this would be a good spot for me to come up? Then yeah, I think that.
Yeah, you go back in the day, like 30, 40 years, and then you get the players, they're sitting around telling stories about the way it used to be. And I feel like you talk about today's game versus what it was. There's like some story that you find out like 12 years. Like, this is what would have happened in the past. 12 years later, someone would have been on a show or a podcast or just bullshit. And he says, Rob said, under no circumstances are you playing today. Under no circumstances. And I'm looking and I say, Mundo, get on first base, nobody out. And I walked up to Rob and I said, you're putting me in this fucking game. And then I hit a 2-run homer and we won. Like, that's the story. Like, that's the stuff that you used to hear. And now it's, Rob looked at me and said, load management, take a seat, buddy. And I watched Cal Stevenson hit into a 1-6-3 double play. Like, you're not getting, like, that's not a story. There's nothing charming about that.
No, absolutely not. But I'm glad you mentioned that. Heck of a play by Kyle Finnegan there.
Yeah, it's a great play.
In all honesty, it probably, if he doesn't make that play, I mean, they might get the out at first, but Sosa probably gets the second.
I have a question for you. Would Estevez made that play?
No.
Look,
you know, Kyle Finnegan was the guy that he was the guy that I wanted.
I know, that's why I asked.
I like Finnegan.
That's why I asked the question. All right, we actually have to talk about some other things that happened in yesterday's game, and kind of sort through what it all means. I guess let's start with Taijuan Walker, my favorite subject. Where were you the day that Taijuan Walker took 27 pitches to get through 4 batters in a scoreless first inning? Dude, like, I texted you, I was like, I know he bared down there and got through it, and I guess that's all you can really ask of him, but like, come on, 27 pitches. Could not find his command, was sort of, I thought, passive. Like, Rob talked about that after the game, saying he wished he was a little bit more of an attack mode early in games. What were your impressions of Taijuan Walker yesterday? This is like gotten to a point where I know he's giving you about what you expect. What did he go? 4 2/3, 4 plus, 3 earned or something? I mean,
yeah.
Okay. I guess. I mean, it's embarrassing though. It's embarrassing that this is where it's at.
Well, and then the other debate that was raging online yesterday on the X, on the Twitter,
getting out after 4.
Why didn't they pull him after 4? Was actually a useful 4 innings. You had a rested bullpen because you had the complete game the night before by Sanchez. Why not just go right to the bullpen at that point? And it's a fair question, but at the same time, and I think I texted, I think I texted this to you. A couple people were texting me that, they're basically saying to this guy, you're well paid, go out and earn your money. So go out and get us that 5th inning. And he almost did, but then he ran out of games.
One thing that Taijuan Walker does is eat innings, is what I was told. And oh boy.
So the interesting thing is, and for once, I've said many times that I think Taijuan Walker is he says things just to say them, right? In his press conferences, and like, he's just repeating the same old tropes over and over again, and you just kind of roll your eyes at the guy. But I honestly believed him a little bit yesterday. He talked about after the game. He said that he's not trusting his pitches, And what he means by that is, especially the splitter, now that he's throwing it a lot, he's not trusting that it's good enough that he can throw it start it in the zone, and it's still be an effective pitch. His problem is that he's trying to throw it below the zone at all times. And so therefore, if guys spit on it, he's walking guys. So he's concerned that he's putting too many runners on base with walks. He's throwing too many pitches. He did, and this was a notable thing with him yesterday. I think it was his 91st pitch or 92nd pitch. He threw it at 94.
Yes, he did.
He got up to 94. So it shows you that that's in there. That's there. And so maybe his issue isn't necessarily mechanical, isn't necessarily the stuff, but maybe it's between the ears with him a little bit. And if there's ever a way that he could get over whatever limitations that he's dealing with as far as that's concerned, maybe he then becomes a useful number 5. But that's a big maybe in my book, Bob. I know everybody is tired of the same BS with him, and we all should be, right? Everybody should be. It's like, all right, enough with this guy. But at the same time, he's your best option right now for another 5 starts this year.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. Are we at a point where he's still a better option than a Tyler Phillips? Is he a better option than Colby Allard? Are you more confident in Taijuan Walker's ability to, I guess, go out and give you 5 innings and give up anywhere between 3 to 5 runs? Are you comfortable with that for the remainder of this season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not comfortable with any of them, in all honesty. But if I had to pick which one I think is the most effective of those 3 guys, and if you want to throw in Kyle Tyler, who they acquired from the Marlins, off of waivers, he's got some major league experience this year. So of the 4, I think Walker's probably the best bet. I think those other guys are all, hey, if Walker blows up, then we're going to go to one of these guys. But yes.
We've talked a lot about him. We've talked about his fit in the clubhouse. Guys like him. He wants to win. Certainly he's not out there. Though it looks like he's totally apathetic, I think it is more just lack of trust, lack of in himself, frustration. Yeah. But you just watch him and it inspires such little confidence, from a fan perspective or from an observer. I wonder what it's like to be on the field with him. You get out there in the first inning yesterday as a player and you're going all right, JT's down, Bryce is down, and we're doing this again. And you want them to succeed. It's not like guys are out there rolling their eyes going Christ, but it's got to be a little bit tough. I mean, dude, he threw 99 pitches yesterday and he got 14 outs. The night before, Christopher Sanchez threw 99 pitches and got 27 outs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you're playing behind Christopher Sanchez, and I know that he's not a perfect pitcher. He's had his down moments too, but balls are in play, efficient. The game is moving. Whereas Taijuan's out there, and you're like, geez, man,
almost an hour difference in those games between yesterday and Saturday as well.
I mean, you're talking about a 6-4 game yesterday. It wasn't like it was 14-12.
Right. Yeah.
So it's tough. And I mean, I hate this. I hate saying this, but it's a little bit of an oversimplification, but it is what it is. The upside there is that maybe he gets you through 6 and he gives up 2 or 3, maybe. And then the floor is probably goes 4 innings and gives up 4 or 5. That's what it's going to be.
Well, Rob said, I don't know if I'm sure you heard it. He said in the press conference yesterday, he thinks that there's more there, but if all he is a 5-inning pitcher, then that's okay too.
It's okay, yeah.
I guess we could say that for any number 5 starter, right? If you, no matter, don't say that his name's Taijuan Walker. He's player X.
Yeah.
If player X comes in and can give you 5 innings and keep you in a game, might give up 3 or 4 runs, but keep you in the game, you'll take it from a number 5 starter.
The problem is, and hopefully this problem is rectified this weekend in Kansas City, but you need that other guy to come back, whether he's your 3 or your 4 in Ranger Suarez. He has missed a significant amount of time now. This has not been a quick little 10-day job. I mean, he's been out. And they gave him extra rest before he went out on the injured list. I mean, they need him back now. And it may not be start 1. I'm not saying he's got to hit the ground running and be that guy right away, but by the time you turn the corner and you get a week or two into September, you got to feel good about what he is. Like, I can live with whatever Taijuan Walker is going to bring to the table, so long as Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez, and like with Christopher Sanchez, look, I think what you've seen from him lately is sort of what it might be here. Really good, not so good. You don't always know exactly what you're going to get. And like, that's okay too. But Ranger Suarez has to be good now. Like, he's got to get to a point in September where you feel good about what he's doing. Not this guy that's 5 innings, 6 runs, 10 hits. Like, he's got to be Ranger Suarez, at least. Maybe not the guy we saw in April or May, but like Ranger Suarez as we expected him coming into the year.
Yeah, I agree. And it sounds like Saturday is when he's going to start. We had a really, I got a great Rob Thompson story for you. That I'll tell you in a minute. But we had a good amount of time in his office yesterday morning. I always find that those Sunday mornings in Rob's office are more entertaining and engaging than any other time we talk to Rob. The Sunday mornings are really unique. But anyway, he basically said the rotation for next week or this week coming up. Wheeler's definitely pitching Tuesday. Tomorrow against the Braves. Nola's definitely pitching Wednesday, which surprised me a little bit because they pushed him to 111 pitches in his last outing. Most pitches he's thrown in a game in 3 years. And I thought maybe that would be where they would want to get an extra day. But he said he checked in with Nola. Nola's fine. He feels good. So he's going to go on regular rest on Wednesday. And then Thursday's a TBA, but probably Christopher Sanchez. Again, they just want to see how he feels coming off of his start a couple days. They were thinking maybe give him an extra day, but he's probably going to start against the Braves on Thursday. So there's your first 3. That means Walker comes back on regular rest Friday against Kansas City, which that's not a good matchup, but whatever. And then Suarez would have to pitch Saturday because Wheeler, to be on regular rest, would have to go Sunday in Kansas City.
Right.
So you're probably looking at Saturday for Ranger Suarez.
Okay. And like, I feel good about all that. Like, one thing that, though, I was not terribly impressed with this week that the Phillies had. I'm not ready to say, oh, we're all the way back. Fine. The thing that I kind of leaned into and said, all right, I feel good that I like where Zach Wheeler's at. Aaron Nola was very good on, Friday night. Christopher Sanchez was obviously sensational and probably alleviated some of the concern that you might have had about his outing in Arizona. Like, all good. Like, cool there. The bullpen is like become a little bit concerning, and guys that I really like and have had trust in and faith in, and I still do. But like, you at least at some point now have to ask a question about what's going on with Jeff Hoffman. What's going on with Matt Strahm? I thought Matt Strahm was terrible yesterday. And like, I know he got out of it, sort of, didn't let it balloon to a 3-run inning, kept them in the game. It could have been a lot worse. Totally get it. I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah,
it's like not just a one-off. Like, these two guys have not been good now. I don't want to say they've been terrible. I don't want to like oversell this, but they have not been rock solid by any measure. And I mean, there's numbers to back this up. The whips actually aren't bad. They're like about 1, both of them. Like, over their last like 7 appearances, you're like, all right, but they're allowing runs, and Hoffman's getting beat by the long balls. So it's weird.
So I think teams are. And we didn't, Rob didn't talk about this or anything, but I think teams are jumping on them early. Strahm gives up a hit first pitch yesterday. Then he walks a guy. And then there's the bunt single, which is kind of, those plays are the ones that drive pitchers nuts. And I got to imagine gets into their heads a little bit because that he's trying to sacrifice himself. It ends up getting a hit out of it. Now it's bases loaded, nobody out instead of second and third, 1 out. Because then they get the weak ground ball. Okay, I can get the force at the plate. All right, fine. And then you talked about it with me via text. He gets 0-2 on Jacob Young, and then that pitch is fastball up, and it's out of the zone, but it's not a good pitch, and it's enough to make contact. And you need a strikeout pitch there.
Yeah, I just thought, like, I get it. He wasn't in the zone, but, like, what's he going to do? It's an elevated sinker in the middle of the plate. Like, come on.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's why the pitch is a bad pitch, right?
I mean, he knew it. Like, his body language, like, he knew it. It wasn't like, oh, damn, I made my pitch. Like, he missed his spot.
Yeah. Yeah, so that one's not good. And then Hoffman, Again, 98-mile-per-hour fastball. So his slider's been good. Hoffman's slider's been really good this last few times out, and that was something that the team was a little bit worried about when he got torched in Seattle. Like, the slider was not good that night, and they needed to get that going again. And the slider's been good, and it was good again yesterday. It was good a couple outings before, but it was a fastball that was a bad location on the fastball, and James Wood just absolutely murdered that pitch. I mean, that was unbelievable. Like, off the bat was like, oh my God. And I know they only went 417 feet, but like, it felt like it could have gone 600 feet. Like, that's what that sounded like coming off the bat yesterday. But you're right. And then Rob says after the game that it was location for Strom and command for or control for control for Strom, command for Hoffman.
Right.
And then Alvarado too. And Alvarado gets through the inning yesterday. Yeah, he gave up the one hit. Then got 3 outs. He was the only reliever who had a clean inning. But he even said Alvarado's not striking anybody out. He's not missing.
Not striking anybody out.
All 3 outs were on contact. So there's a reason that in the moment you should be concerned, because Estevez, he blows the save the other night, right? Kerkering's not been good lately.
Banks has been
Banks gives up a run yesterday.
Yeah.
Both hits were by left-handers.
Yeah.
Who's the whole purpose in trading for him was he gets out lefties. Lefties can't touch him. Well, guess what? He gave up a double and a single to back-to-back left-handers, and he gives up a run yesterday. So, like, they've all got their moments. But I think when it comes to a bullpen, you kind of want this to be, if they have to have a time where it's not going well, that it'd be now.
Yeah.
So there's concern in the moment, but I don't think that there's grave concern at this point.
And like, in fairness to Matt Strom, like, I'll be fair and balanced here. It was the first time this month he had given up a run. Like, it's not like he's been getting lit up every single time he's out there. Now, he had a blow up against the Yankees at the very end of July. So, like, if you take that out over like the last 10 games, it's like a little bit, the numbers don't look great, but it's yesterday, it's the Yankees game. That's what inflates the ERA. Like I said, you look at his last 7 games, his whip is actually under 1, but the ERA isn't great because he's,
small sample.
Yeah, small sample.
Like, you have one bad game over a small sample.
Right. And
ERA is going to be high.
I'm not panicking about Matt Strom, but like the numbers in the second half, because of a couple blowups, the ERA is over. What's his name? John Stolnis or whatever. I mean, look, I didn't verify this, so I shouldn't even put this out there. But like, Phillies bullpen second half ERAs: Jeff Hoffman 5.11, Matt Strom 4.76. Ryan Kerkering 6.55, Jose Alvarado 5.91. Disclaimer: I don't know. John tweets a lot of things and then ends up deleting them. So like, I should have looked this up myself, but I'll take it for what it is. Have those guys all been that bad? No. Like, 4.76 Matt Strom. Do you feel like he's had that ERA in the second half? I don't. But it's a product of a couple hiccups. The issue, though, you talk about Alvarado, and like, that's the one guy I'm genuinely concerned about. I'm genuinely concerned about Jose Alvarado, and I'll give you 2 reasons why. You look at what he's done in July and in August. So opponents, he pitched, 10 games in July. Opponents hit 306 against him with a 918 OPS. He had 8 strikeouts in those 10 appearances. Like, not striking out a ton of guys. You look at what he's done in August, 7 games. Opponents hitting 286 against him with an 891 OPS. The strikeouts, he's striking out less, under 9 per 9. Like, that's not what we're used to seeing from him. Like, he's a guy that you feel like he comes into a game, he's good for a strikeout or 2 almost every time he's on the mound. And he hasn't been that guy now for months. Do you think it's we have to figure it out with him? Do you think that the Phillies think to themselves, like, look, if he's not right, we're in a lot of trouble. Like, we've got to find a way to get him right? Or do you think that there's some wheels in motion where they're going, we may not be able to trust him in October, so we've got to find ways to navigate not using him in absolute key moments, key situations?
I think that he's going to be a guy who's used sixth, seventh inning in the postseason. You have to go with what you got, right? Unless he completely and utterly falls off the table big time, and he's fallen off enough that the concern is real, and I agree with you. He's the one guy in the bullpen that I go, uh-oh.
Yeah, he's got. Oh, here you go. I have it right here. 7.6 strikeouts per 9, 1.5 whip, 5.91 ERA, second half, 12 games.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good, but it's been longer than that, Bob. It's not just
because it goes back
second half.
It really goes back to London. You want to talk about like the London thing? Is this like line of like when did the problem start for the Phillies? Go back to that game against the Mets, and that was Jose Alvarado's starting point of like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. He's not been good for a while. So it's one thing to go through a stretch of games and you're not right, and he's just not. But I don't think I don't think he's at a point where it's like, well, we can't use him at all. I think it's at a point where it's like, we got to find some swing and miss. We got to figure out why that's not working. And if we don't get it right in the next month, we're still going to use him, but he's going to be lower leverage.
Yeah,
he's not going to be the higher leverage guy. And that's, I mean, obviously that's concerning, because you looked at it and said you had 4 guys at the back of the bullpen that you were trusting, and now you're down to 3. And it's like, okay, so all right, so you're gonna have to kind of piecemeal the other inning or 2 here and there. And Alvarado's going to be part of it, but so is going to be, Tanner Banks is going to be part of it. And
so here you are 20 days after the trade deadline. You think the Phillies have any regrets about how they handled it, both in the bullpen and I guess maybe with the outfield? Although I don't know exactly what they could have done in terms of the outfield.
I don't think that they regret it yet, but I think that it could end up being that eventually. Where you look at it,
let me ask you a more specific question, because we've done this, and one of my big annoyances is like, why Philly should have went out and got a difference-making outfielder, and like it was something I said forever, like, and I feel that they should have. They didn't. I don't know, in like their defense, I don't know who that was supposed to be. I don't know who they were. Like, were they dialed in on a guy? Did they almost bring in someone? And like we come to find out after the fact. What we do know, though, you trust some pretty stellar reporters, is that they were in on Garrett Crochet. Do you think that there's any remorse? Like if they were in and they were really in, and there was a willingness by the White Sox to do the deal, but it just took getting a little bit crazier. Maybe the Phillies were a little crazy, but it just took being a little crazier to bring him here. You think that there's any regret 20 days later about not doing that?
Because they didn't include Painter. That's what the reporting was. Ken Rosenthal reported it, that it was supposed to be that the White Sox were interested. The Phillies were engaged. Dodgers were also involved. Obviously, neither team got him. The Phillies did not include Andrew Painter, and that was why it did not happen. And so you got to sit there and say to yourself, should you have traded Andrew Painter for a guy? And let's put it this way. Yes, he's a starter, and yes, he's a really good starter, strikes out a lot of guys, but that's not why the Phillies were interested in him. They were interested in him as a starter long term, but they were interested in bringing him in to be a starter for handful of games here in the second half, and then in the postseason to make him a left-handed reliever in the back end of your bullpen because of how many guys he strikes out.
Well, here's your disaster scenario. It's game 6 of the NLCS, and there's a pocket of left-handers coming up. And here comes Jose Alvarado, and it's 4 pitches in a row out of the zone. It's fastball out over the middle of the plate, dunked into left field. It's another walk. It's a wild pitch. And Garrett Crochet is on a golf course in Palm Beach somewhere saying, like, I probably could have gotten those guys out. Like, Andrew Painter better be good. I'm like going disaster scenario, but that's the moment that you're acquiring him for. So just based on what Jose Alvarado's done here for the last 2.5 months, I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah, and it's a tough call, Bob, because like I'm not opposed to trading anybody, right? But at the same time, do you sit there and say, is Andrew Painter, who everybody in baseball says when he's back being healthy, top pitching prospect in the game?
Absolutely.
Is it worth giving up that guy for a guy who's going to be a reliever for you in the playoffs? And you don't know. I mean, Garrett Crochet's never done this is his breakout year, but he's never thrown more than the innings he's throwing this year. So how does this impact him going forward? Like, there's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of risk there. This is not a slam dunk move. Yeah,
right.
I'm not even I'm not advocating for them to have done that. I just think certainly it's a question that will be asked quite a bit.
Yes,
in
yes.
2 months from now if things don't work out. I mean,
yeah, Painter would have gotten that deal done, but I'm not certain that's the right deal.
it's crazy. I mean, and had the Phillies not slumped, if they were on pace to win 105 games, the conversation wouldn't be different. As you drive towards the fall, like the reality just becomes more pressing that they have to win this year. Like they have to win. There's so much at stake for this organization. When you get to October, it's going to change everything. If they fall flat on their faces in October, like I'm not saying there's no coming back from it. Like next spring, everyone gets down to Clearwater. They're going to be a good team. There's still like the guys that you like, but man, the Phillies are going to have some decisions to make. And like, you just, if they don't do it and like it all goes wrong, what are you doing, Bryson Stott? What's the future of Brandon Marsh with this team? Like, do you want to do another year of Nick Castellanos, or can you kind of build on this momentum that he's had in the second half and maybe part ways and free up money and change the look and feel of your roster? Like, there are going to be so many different things that you have to answer this winter, and you're going to have to do that even if they win it. But like, if it comes with disappointment, not seizing the moment, blown saves, offense goes cold, like all the things that come with that, man.
Yeah, no, I think that there's going to be change regardless, but I do think it's a different conversation if they win.
There really is
versus if they lose.
There's an immense amount of pressure on this team. You know, it is different this year. There's no like, well, you know, they're back in the playoffs, or there's no 107 win or 103 win Braves team with a historic offense standing across from them. It's like, yo, guys, like it's you and it's, I guess, the Dodgers, and God knows what their pitching staff's going to look like by the time that thing materializes, you know? So you probably are the best team despite all the warts here that we've seen for the last month and a half. You better go do it. And that's been the storyline all along. I know that this is nothing different, but I just feel it intensifying as we get closer to September here.
For sure. By the way, I just wanted to point out when you mentioned the ERAs that John Stolness put out there, I just wanted to give an example of why it's dangerous to kind of list ERA.
Yeah.
All right. So Jeff Hoffman, he's 5.11 ERA. We know Jeff Hoffman had one really bad outing against Seattle. He gave up 4 runs. Okay. The rest of the second half, he's given up 3 runs. So 4 runs in one game.
How many appearances was that? Do you have that in front of you?
It was 12. I think it was 12. I have it here on his screen. 13. I'm sorry. 13. So 13 appearances. Okay. In one appearance, he gave up 4 runs. In the other 12, he's given up 3. So his ERA in the other 12 games is 2.38.
Sure.
Just as a comparative, you know, Strum is probably going to find similar things. He had that big blow up against the Yankees, right? So like, there are guys just don't always just go by the ERA. The WHIP for bullpen is far more of a impactful number than ERA.
I think really what you're looking at here is legitimate concern about Jose Alvarado. I have some concern about Kerkering. I don't have as much concern about Hoffman or Strom, though clearly they have not been as effective here in the second half as they were in the first. Okay, and that's probably going to happen. Both those guys are pitching at a borderline absurd rate. Like, you expect some degree of regression. No problem with that. But man, if Kerkering and Alvarado aren't right, and this continues, then you've got some big time holes in that bullpen. And that would drive back to a question that I had for you about a month ago before the trade deadline, which is like, hey, if that's the case and this bullpen is sort of totally up in the air, do you think about a scenario again where you're like, hey, Ranger, you missed a month. You were ineffective the month prior to that. We're going to go Zach. We're going to go Aaron. We're going to go Chris. And you're going to be that swing guy. And maybe that's how you reinforce your bullpen. I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible. And then the other name that we're forgetting that's kind of still out there that could help from the right side, maybe not in the highest of leverage, but Spencer Turnbull.
I don't know what the hell to make of that at this point. I mean,
well, he's starting throwing again. They had he had 2 minor setbacks with just feeling it, kind of like not that he's re-injured it, but that he's just feeling that, you know, a little bit of twinging back there. But it's feeling better now. He's starting throwing again. They still think he'll be back at some point in September. I think that they get him in for a couple weeks, probably the second half of September, and then he's another arm that you have available to you. And so then it becomes then what I think is interesting, Bob, is could you potentially go 1, 2, 3, and then your game 4, if you need something, do something like a Turnbull for 3 innings and then turn it over to the bullpen kind of situation, and you have Suarez out of the bullpen, right? I mean, I think it's possible.
I would certainly feel a lot better about that, though, if we get 2 weeks of Spencer Turnbull. If I can see him 3 or 4 times, not, hey, we came back on September 29th, threw for us once, and now we're going to just throw him into the fire and hope it works out. I mean, that's not exactly reassuring. What can we say? Like, not that this was overly negative. I don't think that this was a super negative podcast to this point, but I mean, I think the reality is there's been some aggravation here. There's been some disappointment. Like, here's the one thing I want. Trey Turner's been awesome. That's great. We knew that, but we knew that was going to happen. Like, we knew it was like, oh, he's terrible for a month, and here comes Trey Turner. He's out of his mind again. Like, I guess the only, my Trey Turner takeaway, and I guess I'm going to turn this into the negative, is like, I hope he does this at the right time. Like, I hope he does what he's doing right now come October 1.
Yeah, of course. We all do. I guess my takeaway from this whole weekend is, or this past week has been, geez, it's all about pitching. Where have we heard this before? Yeah. Like, the lineup is fine. The lineup is going to be the lineup. The lineup it's not perfect, but it's not bad, right? So the lineup is the lineup. Trey Turner is back hitting the way he's supposed to be hitting. I felt JT Realmuto had a really nice week, a little bit more than a week now. His last 8 or 9 games, he's been hitting over 300, really starting to come back around. Castellanos continues to hit. Weston Wilson looks like a guy you could play even in the playoffs against left-handed pitching. Like, I think that's a possibility. I think Brandon Marsh is going to be a bench player in the playoffs. I think Johan Rojas, as much as we've killed him on this show, has been really good lately. And if he continues to do what he's been doing at the plate, get on base once or twice a game, he's fine at batting ninth. He's got to do that, though.
Johan Rojas was fine offensively last year, though, too.
Yeah, but he's
that's my thing. Like, but that's my thing. It's like, okay, credit to him. Like, credit to him. He's
been different.
My modest expectations, but like, what are you going to do against elite level pitching in October? Can you handle it?
I agree. I still, have a little bit of a concern about that ultimately.
Like, Brandon Marsh, can you? I know you just said you kind of don't expect him to start at this point. Can you figure something out in the next 6 weeks where you put the ball in play consistently? Like Brandon Marsh hits a home run yesterday, and you're like, yay! Like, that's not the expectation for that guy. Like, he's supposed to be better than this. Like,
his first 2 at bats were brutal. He struck out both times with runners on base.
So it's like, it's not to like discredit certain things, but like, my expectation of Brandon Marsh as a player, I don't think he's an all-star. I don't think he's going to be an all-star, but I think he's a very good hitter against right-handed pitching who can play quality defense and corner outfield spots for you. And if you need a guy to run around in center field, he can do it. Maybe not at a high level, but at a serviceable level. Like, what he has materialized and what he's become this season is well short of what I think he's capable of. And that's frustrating. Bryson Stott homered yesterday. That's great. Like, I don't have it in me to talk about Bryson Stott anymore on this show. Like, what I have said is what I think. And can you do more now? You've got 6 weeks to show that there's more here and that you can build off of something, because every time there's been that glimmer, that little flicker of hope, it's been quickly extinguished. Those guys have been so disappointing. So to see them go back to back yesterday, hey, that's great. That's awesome. But like, now go out and carry that over. Like, go get a big hit in Atlanta and win a game. Go off for 10 games and get your season back on track.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I don't think is being talked about enough, and I think it really should be brought up, and I guess because it's not a hitting streak, it nobody really talks about it. But Alec Boehm has reached base now 35 consecutive games.
Anthony, you'd think that they were chasing history if you watch the telecast. Like, holy shit. Every time the guy gets on base, like, oh, it's 35 in a row. Like, I mean, dude, like,
I think it's good. I think
they're going to be giving out like commemorative coins in 2 years over this. Like, It's a great thing. It is. Like, it is very impressive. But if you watch these telecasts, I know you're in the press box.
Yeah, I don't get to see it on the TV when I'm there.
Jason Schmidt. Like, come on, man.
Which is the best. Someone said to me, and I didn't hear you might say it because you were watching it on TV, that apparently Schmidt didn't know that he had the record.
No, yeah, his OPS was like over 1,000. He did it across like the parts of 2 seasons. The numbers were ridiculous. He had like 348 OPS north of 1,000. Like, I mean, and he was like, I didn't even know, you know. And they're like,
That's great. That's great. By the way, I promised a little bit earlier a good Rob Thompson story. So we walk into his office, and up on his TV, he's got the Little League World Series on and the Canadian team's on. Obviously, he's interested in the Canadian team, and they're losing, they're struggling, and so Todd Zalecki makes a joke with him and says, "Hey, looks like your team up there could use you out there." And he's like, "Yeah, whatever." And so then he talked about the fact that he's the team's from British Columbia. And he has never been to British Columbia. He's Canadian, but he's never been to anywhere in Canada other than Ontario. And one time he went to Calgary. And so it was like, oh, so, what do you remember about Calgary? He says, well, I was only in Calgary for a short time. We actually went to Banff, which is a beautiful, beautiful little mountain town in the Canadian Rockies, Lake Louise out there, whatever. He said, went dog sledding. I go, Rob, you went dog sledding, huh? He's like, yeah, tip the sled. So what? So he's explained, and he was the most, Rob, when telling this story, is the most words Rob Thompson has ever put together at one time in the time that I've been covering him. And he's going through all the details about how the sled is put together, and the faster dogs are at the front and the stronger dogs are in the back. That way when you're going uphill, the stronger dogs are pulling, but when you're on flat ground, they go at the speed of the faster dogs. And he says, and there's this break in the middle when you're driving it. And he says, you got to learn how to do the break because you can't do it too hard because then it loosens the reins, right? And there's all this slack and the dogs get tied up, whatever. He said, so you got to really kind of learn how to do the break. He said, and I trained on it a little bit. He said, but I'm on there with my wife and the dogs are pulling the sled and we're going around this turn and going too fast. He says, and then I try to hit the brake, and he says, and it didn't go right, and I tipped the sled. And so we're laughing at him, right, about him tipping the sled. And he says, yeah, but here's the best part. He said, you're taught that when you tip the sled, you have to hold on. He says, otherwise the dogs will just keep running because they don't know, right? So he's like, I tip the sled and I fall and I'm hanging on for dear life and they're dragging me through the snow. Meanwhile, his wife is in the sled and she's just sitting there like everything's okay. And he's dangling off the back of the sled as the dogs keep pulling him. I just thought it was a funny story. It was just Rob at his.
It's nice to see a guy who's getting killed by people like me over every single decision. He's got a lot of pressure on him. We just talked about, man, the Phillies better win the World Series, or this guy's going to get crushed. It's nice when you can remove him from the thing that probably gives him a ton of anxiety, and just you see a guy just be himself for even if it's 3 minutes.
Yeah,
so that's
it was a great story. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of laughs at that point. So some good jokes that were being told. It was funny.
Yeah.
I got one last thing for you, Bob.
Sure.
This was something that was a discussion down at the ballpark. I think it was either Thursday or Friday. Well, I forgot which day the story came out. And since we didn't have an episode on Friday, it was worth talking about today. Major League Baseball talking about the possibility of changing a rule to keep starting pitchers in games longer.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this.
Yes, I did.
But the concept would be that a starting pitcher has to remain in the game unless he gives up 4 runs or there's an injury, or else he's got to pitch into the 6th inning, or else the designated hitter comes out. It would be like a penalty if you pull your starting pitcher early. And the rationale behind this is that it makes starting pitching cool again, so you're not burning bullpens so much. All the stuff that the teams are taking advantage of with the rules of sending a guy out, putting him on the IL, back up,
less
and down.
velocity, more action, less injuries. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my question for you is this? Well, it's a 2-part question. 1, what do you think of it? And 2, is it realistic?
I don't know, man. Like I guess my thing is we've talked about it on the show, the way things were. You'd watch Team A versus Team B, your probable pitchers, and say that's a hell of a matchup. Let's strap in and watch these two guys go at it. And I think that the reality is there's fewer of those guys in the sport right now. Like you can still get premium matchups for what it is, but there's fewer guys, so there's fewer of those matchups, and you realize that the importance of those matchups has been diminished. There's just no arguing that. So whereas you go back into the 90s, and I'll keep it local, but you got Schilling Maddox, and you're like, I'm locking in tonight. I can't wait to watch these two guys go at it. There's maybe a list of 10 names right now, maybe 10. I don't even know, honestly. And I'm like a little bit of a hater because I'll even look at some of the best pitchers in the sport and go like, I'm good on that. Like Garrett Cole versus Tyler Glasnow. I don't care about either of those guys. Like that does not, like, whatever.
Former teammates.
Because, like, and that's the thing. I think that some of the prestige has been diminished. And these are great pitchers, especially Garrett Cole. I mean, like he's a Hall of Famer. But I do think that some of the mystique, some of the aura of these guys has been diminished by what starting pitchers have become. So I love the idea of making the starting pitcher more important, putting more of a premium on them, more of an importance on them. I hate how the game has become like who can rev it up to 102 and blast a hitter for a year and then get Tommy John surgery and reconstruct their elbow and then come back and try to do it again. Like that part of the game sucks. I think from a developmental side of it, the whole thing is a joke. Like you go on Twitter and you're like 15U, was at, I'm not going to like make fun of any like organizations here, but was at this showcase this weekend, topped out at 88.3 miles per hour. Like you're like, dude, what the hell are we doing here? Like I hate what the sport has become from like a developmental standpoint all the way up through middle school, like premium select. We're going down to Georgia this week with our 11U team. Like the whole thing is disgusting. It really is. It really is. So like when I look at all of that, does this rule fix and alleviate all of that? No, because at the end of the day, it's really about money, at least down at those levels. But I love the idea in theory. Is it realistic? I don't know. I think that invites a whole host of questions and issues.
Well, I think there are major issues. Well, first of all, everybody down, and you talk to the players and coaches down at the Phillies, and they think that it really puts guys at risk doing it this way, right? Like the injury, like you talk about the analytics people like really having a conniption. Imagine them having to let their pitcher stay out there for an extra 15, 20 pitches that they don't want them to do, all season long, and they're really going to go nuts.
But what if you did it with caveats, like with like qualifiers? Like, look, if he reaches X amount of pitches by this inning, like Taijuan Walker goes out and throws 36 pitches in the first inning, then that's going to change the math. Like, it's not like the guy has to be left for dead for 6 innings. I mean, pitch counts, maximums, performance. Like, you go out and get rocked. You give up 6 runs in 2 innings. Like, guy's not going to stay out there. Get him out of the game. So, like, there would have to be significant.
Yeah, there'd be a lot
ever to happen, and I still don't think it will. But if this were ever to happen, there would have to be 25 qualifiers put into this to make it work.
Well, and here's my other issue: like the designated hitter. I've never been a fan, but that's me being an old school guy. I understand why it's there. Okay, fine. Now all of a sudden you're going to say we're going to put a guy who's one of our best hitters, and you got to have to take one of the best hitters out of the line. So as we're trying to promote starting pitchers, we're going to say that you risk taking your best hitter or one of your best hitters out of your lineup so that the fans don't get to see that player anymore. And that's the penalty for it. It's like, that's ridiculous.
Right.
That's absurd to me. And then what's the rule for Shohei? What's the rule for Shohei Ohtani? If he's starting and you want to get him out, but because he's also he bats for himself, is he allowed to stay in the game as a hitter?
Right.
Or does he have to completely come out? Like, there are so many different things that I think there's too many potholes that you would need to fill. And I think it's just way too much to try and change it around. The way to get more make starting pitching cool again is to develop, like you were saying, at the development level, to develop players to be pitchers.
Command over stuff.
Yes.
It's about having a repertoire. It's about having multiple pitches thinking through a lineup. How do I beat this guy with 93 instead of 102? And like,
correct.
That's the part where, like, that's why I'm a proponent of it in theory, though in practice, I think it's probably unrealistic. Like, I would love to see kids, and I'd love to see organizations say, like, all right, like, command the baseball, be a pitcher. And I'm not saying that we got to like get Jamie Moyer back in the game, but like, Christ, could you imagine Jamie Moyer like in today's game? Like, it would be great. Like, I love the idea of, and I think you run an immense amount of risk with pitchers at the professional level, and I think there's probably significant health implications. But I do think that if we were more of the mindset of, you're 17 years old and 88 to 90 was special, like, but can you pitch, and do you have multiple offerings, and do you have command? Like, that's where it would be nice to be. Drive across South Jersey. I'm sure it applies in PA as well, but I'll just talk about what I know. It used to be, and I might have said this on the show before, but if a kid threw 90 miles an hour in this area, you were like, you knew who he was, and you were at some point, if you were a coach or a player or cared about the game, you'd go watch that kid. Like, you go out on a Saturday and watch that kid throw a baseball and be 10 deep. Today, there might be a kid that throws 90 miles an hour at a third of the high schools. There might be 2 or 3. And you're like, it's just become commonplace because that's the game. It's like, can you get to 90? Okay, then you can get recruited, and then we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, I think it's more about where baseball is at the developmental level. I think if you fix that, and it's Major League Baseball's responsibility to kind of create that environment. And what I mean by that is to not make it all about guys who throw 100 miles an hour, right? It's to make it about pitchers again. And once Major League Baseball goes in that direction, I think it trickles down and it changes at the lower levels. And once that happens, then I think you can make starting pitching cool again.
Yeah, look, and I don't want to belabor the point here. I get frustrated by what I see at the youth and the developmental levels because it's twofold. It's a lot of it is a scam. I mean, look, there's a lot of really good players and they go to these showcases and they do get seen and it works out. But a lot of these showcases, a lot of these teams are constructed around 2 or 3 kids. The rest, it's a money grab. Like, you help support the system. You help support the machine. You see these guys in some of these labs and they're like, we're going to get you to 90. And like, they do, but at what cost? Like, what's the sustainability long-term of that? Like, is the kid going to stay healthy? A lot of these kids, it's like, come to this tournament, come to this showcase, work with this trainer. And it's a money grab. Like, one very, very prominent South Jersey, I'll call them a trainer, said to me one time, like, we sell dreams. Like, that's my whole job, is selling a dream, often unrealistic. And like, it's just, that's a shame. Like, that's a shame that like, that's where the sport is going. I'm not saying that perfect game is like, I haven't been around it enough lately to really get into it, but I do think it's a shame that the game isn't about learning a skill. It's about like, can you beat a radar gun? Can you hit a ball and hit like the hit tracker? Is your exit velocity over 95? Like, that's what we want. And I think that Major League Baseball does have a responsibility, at least to some degree, to try to change that. But
yes. Is
it a 6-inning limit or a 6-inning threshold for starting pitchers? Probably not.
Right. Exactly.
Well, there you go.
That's good. Right. Yeah, it's good. It was a good one.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. All right. Well, look, for Anthony Sanfilippo, I'm Bob Wankel.
And we didn't even get into the Braves coming up, how big this series is.
Yeah, it's a huge series. But I mean, like, we'll find out, right? Like,
and they believe it. They think it's their biggest series of the year.
Yeah, and you can tell by the way they're aligning their pitching. There's no bullpen game. It is going to be those 3 guys. It's Wheeler, it's Nola, it's Sanchez. It's obvious, that they've let that team linger around long enough. I know they're not right on their heels, but one real bad week here and it could get very weird. I think they realize it's time to go deliver the knockout blow. The question will be, can they deliver it? Because they have not shown that gear now for 2 months. So it's time to find it here this week. And we'll see how we go. Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, for Anthony Sanfilippo, I'm Bob Wankel. We will talk to you later this week.